Greetings, my name is Medhat Al-Masri. Today's video demonstrates how we can use natural language to converse with a SQL Server database using MCP from Visual Studio Code. To continue with this tutorial, the prerequisites are: you must have a GitHub account, you should install Visual Studio Code on the Mac or Windows or Linux, it doesn't really matter. You need to also add to Visual Studio Code the GitHub Copilot chat extension. We need Docker Desktop because we're going to run SQL Server in Docker. You can use any other SQL Server as long as you have the correct connection string. And lastly, you need to have the latest versions of node.js, npm, and npx. For a sample database, we will use the well-known Northwind database. In my case, I'm going to run it in a Docker container. Therefore, please start the Docker desktop app. And once you start it, we will start this Docker container that contains the Northwind database. So I'd like you to run this command in a terminal window on your computer. And I will do that right here. This should start the Northwind database in my Docker desktop. And you can see it right here. Notice that the default port number of SQL Server, which is 1433, is being mapped to 1333 on my computer. And another thing I'd like you to notice is that the SA user, which is the admin account in SQL Server, has a password that happens to be this with an exclamation at the end, and the name of the container is NW. We will use an already existing mcp-database-server. Let's visit this site. We need to install this MCP server on our computer. So let's follow these installation instructions. In a working directory, I will execute these commands. First, I'm going to clone a repo. So I'm going to copy this, come here and paste it, and clone the repo. Then I'm going to go into that repo. There is a small error here in the installation instructions because the folder is not really database server, it is mcp-database-server. The next step is to do npm install. After that, we do an npm run build. This will create a dist folder. The next step is to install this MCP server globally in our environment. So I'll just copy this command here and paste it in my terminal window. That installs the MCP server globally on my computer. Open Visual Studio Code in any folder. I opened it in the MCP database server folder by simply typing in code dot. And here is my Visual Studio Code. Let's go into View Command Palette. And in this command palette, you should search for mcp:/add server. It happens to be at the very top because I had used it recently. So let me choose that. And then it comes up with a bunch of options. The option we're going to choose is npm package install from an npm package name. So I'm going to choose that one. It's going to ask me for the name of the package. Now if you go back here, the name of the package is given further down. If you scroll under configuring Cloud Desktop, look at the setting under SQL Server. This would be the name of the package. So let's copy this and put it in VS Code. Hit enter. And the next is it's going to ask us whether we should allow this, and I'm going to say yes, allow it. And now it's thinking. It defaults to SQLite, but we want to use SQL Server. So I'm going to change SQLite simply to SQL Server. and hit enter. It asks me, do you want to install it globally or locally in this particular folder? And I'm going to say I want to do it locally by choosing workspace available in this workspace. It comes up with this dialog, and I'm just going to reply by saying trust. A file called mcp.json gets created under a folder called .vs code. And this mcp.json file has the configuration for our database, but there is something wrong here. It seems to be still thinking that it's going to connect to a SQLite database. So I'm going to delete this line and replace it with these settings. Our database is SQL Server. In our case, it's running on localhost, and the port number is 1333 because that's what we configured the container to listen on. And the name of the database is Northwind. The user is SA and the password is this. So I'll copy this and bring it over and place it right here. And let's tab it in so it looks good. And now you will notice that there is an error here. And the error is because it assumed SQLite and that file doesn't exist. So I'm going to restart. So let's click on restart. And you can see now the MCP server is running. This is really good news because we know that the database is connected. Let us run some queries. So we can go into the GitHub Copilot chat window. Now, in the GitHub Copilot chat window, make sure to select Agent and GPT 4.1. Next, let's query the database. Let's start by asking it this question. You have access to the Northwind database through an MCP server. What are the tables in the database? So let me copy this and put it in the chat and see what happens. It finds a method that it can call. It's called list tables. Let me click on continue here. And here you go. It queried the database and came back saying that the Northwind database contains the following tables. So we know it connected and it was able to query the database. Let's drill down in the database and ask it more questions. The next question is, display the contents of the suppliers table, because there is a suppliers table you can see right here. So let me ask it that question. Display the contents of the suppliers table. And there it goes. You can see that it's sending a query to the database and the query select star from suppliers. Execute that and it's giving me the contents of the suppliers table in a table format, which is clearly legible. Okay, this is interesting. So let's continue querying the database. The next question will be this. What are the products supplied by Exotic Liquids? Display the results in a table format. There's a supplier called Exotic Liquids, and we want to know what products they supply. And we want to see the output in a table format. Let me add this prompt. And you can see the SQL statement right here. Let's click on continue, and there you go. This supplier supplies products chai, chang, and aniseed syrup. In conclusion, we connected the MCP server to SQL Server. You can also connect the MCP server to SQLite, PostgresDB, and MySQL. I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, please give it the thumbs up. Until we meet again in another video, cheers.